Fernando Alonso has, rightly or wrongly, a reputation for career decisions that have led him to the right place at the wrong time. But by forsaking Renault and signing for McLaren, has Daniel Ricciardo's own misjudgment reversed this narrative by opening the door for Alonso's comeback with what will be called Alpine next year? Only Ricciardo knows whether he really has any regrets about a decision made during the COVID-19 induced Formula 1 shutdown long before the 2020 cars had the chance to turn a wheel on a Grand Prix weekend. His deal was announced by McLaren on May the 14th, following hot on the heels of Ferrari revealing it had signed Carlos Sainz. Since then, so much has changed. Back in May, Ricciardo only had pre-season testing, the experience of last year, and what he knew about the longer-term direction of the team to go on when it came to judging the viability of sticking with Renault rather than turning to McLaren. Had the season started as normal, he would likely have had the time to evaluate the upgrades that were ultimately introduced for the new season opening Austrian Grand Prix, which were originally scheduled to have been deployed over the first 6 races of 2020. So let's cast our mind back to the dark and uncertain days of April and May when nobody knew when F1 would get started again. Then, Ricciardo could look back on an unsatisfactory debut campaign with Renault. The team stagnated and struggled to get the anticipated performance gains out of the upgrades it did deploy. In particular, bargeboard updates did not deliver the anticipated performance. But what proved to be a developmental black hole last year has been a rich seam to mine this year, as recent progress has been impressive. The extent to which Ricciardo expected this step versus hoping for it is difficult to judge. Doubtless, his confidence in the team would have been shaken by the previous year's problems, and pre-season testing was a mixed bag for Renault. While there were some signs of progress, and the new Mercedes-style narrow nose was a good change, there was nothing to say Renault had eliminated its fundamental limitations. As Ricciardo himself has said, the car was better in pre-season testing, but he didn't leave Barcelona with a whole chunk of confidence. Now, the team has finally lived up to at least some of the promise that it used to lure him away from Red Bull in the first place. But could he have afforded to take that on trust after testing? Most likely not, and it stands to reason that the big question mark that hung over Renault's capacity to get itself together must have contributed to Ricciardo's decision to go. At 31, Ricciardo is very aware of the clock ticking, and he needs to get into a title-challenging machine soon, or he never will. Locking himself into a team like Renault at a time when McLaren was showing a clearer upward trend and investing in some major infrastructure projects might have felt like a career cul-de-sac. To add to this, there also remained questions over the future of Renault in F1. While this isn't unusual with the marque given its history, you can see why Ricciardo might have felt more confidence in McLaren's future. It is, after all, first and foremost a Grand Prix team, and while McLaren does have a significant automotive arm, Renault's F1 team is just a tiny slice of a much bigger organisation, and therefore easily cuttable. And even if Renault was making positive noises, given the rule changes under discussion, the lowering of the cost cap, and the expectation that the new Concord agreement could make F1 more equitable, nothing was set in stone come May. It might be that Ricciardo saw McLaren as the more definitively upwardly mobile team, even with the financial question marks that hung over it, given it had debts of hundreds of millions of pounds to service. That said, it's impossible to know how aware Ricciardo was of some of what was going on in the background at McLaren at the time he signed up. While the money isn't about to dry up for McLaren, it's legitimate to ask if its ambitious recovery plans might be inhibited by financial concerns. What we don't know for sure is what personal financial terms on offer. We know what Ricciardo's baseline pay was for 2019 and 20, $25 million per season. We know that he's being paid less by McLaren, but there have been a wide range of figures reported that suggest it's around 50 to 60% of that. Whether that's true is difficult to say, but it certainly will be less. As for what Renault offered him, that's down to guesswork, but given the financial climate, it seems fanciful that he wouldn't have faced a cut to continue there in 2021. What we can say decisively is that the facts available to Ricciardo by he making the decision today compared to those of 4.5 months ago are different. The decision to rebrand as Alpine was presumably not known to him then, although there's differing interpretations of whether that's a positive reflection on the company's F1 commitment or not. But Renault does feel like a more credible option now than it did in May. That's despite McLaren's on-track performance this season remaining strong. We know there are those within the Renault team who suspect Ricciardo might have made a different decision were he making it now, given the progress made in recent months in particular. Perhaps, perhaps not. Even Ricciardo probably isn't sure of that. Ricciardo wouldn't be foolish enough to publicly voice any concerns if he did have them about the decision to move to McLaren next year. He says he doesn't regret it and is enjoying the progress Renault is making in the meantime, which is exactly what he would say regardless of his feelings on the matter. While Ricciardo's decision to commit to McLaren did lead to some unhappiness at Enstone, with team principal Cyril Abiteboul apparently not taking the news well, all the signs are that it has been a productive and happy ship once the season started. There's no evidence of the kind of friction that has been created by Ferrari's decision to drop Sebastian Vettel, and Ricciardo has unquestionably been one of the stars of 2020. This means that the relationship could easily have continued, in which case Renault would never have needed to sign Alonso. But it seems plausible any regrets Ricciardo might have are small ones. After all, it's hardly a clear-cut decision. McLaren has 18 months of positive progress, some major infrastructure projects in the works including a new wind tunnel, a Mercedes engine deal and a pleasing trajectory performance-wise, but there are financial challenges. As for Renault, having stagnated before, the evidence of recent months suggests it's back on an upward curve, and the technical team changes made over the winter won't have had a decisive impact yet, perhaps not even until the 2022 car, given the limited scope for development next year. Plus, Renault has already done a lot of its infrastructure spending. But given the Alpine rebrand and the instability inherent in most manufacturer participation in motorsport, there's always going to be a fear of the rug being pulled out from under a team. The recent Honda announcement is a stark reminder of that. Even now, there is no clear answer as to which would have been the better choice, McLaren or Renault. But the stopwatch doesn't lie, and time will eventually tell. If Ricciardo is still finishing fourth on a very good day and watching Alonso in Alpine colours standing on the top step of the podium in 2022, or of course the other way round, then we'll know for sure. So let's say you were in Ricciardo's position. Which team would you choose, McLaren or Renault? And would your answer have been any different back in May? Let us know in the comments, and please don't forget to like and subscribe if you like what we do.